Hello again. We are now up to chapter 4, which is about business ethics and social responsibility. And as we go through this chapter, I just mentioned in the overview, I think this is one of the most important chapters of the course. And before I start, one thing I want to tell you is that I don't believe it's up to me or any other instructor to tell you what your ethics should be. Okay? What I'll do here, similar to what I did when we talked about tariffs in chapter 3, is that I'll give you the facts, and it is up to you to decide what's right, what's wrong. I'm not here to tell you that, okay? That's for you and the person in the mirror to look at. So that's how I'm going to approach this chapter. All right, so what are ethics? So beliefs are right and wrong. And again, what does right and wrong mean? Typically, it's by socially accepted standards, and that's where ethics comes into play. Um, so there's some four things that we can label in terms of ethics. Okay, the first ones that you see in the slide here is the legal and unethical and legal and ethical, and these are kind of straightforward, especially the legal and ethical, high quality products, reward integrity, and lead by example. Um, Legal and unethical, you see here that producing products you know will break down, before their time. You know you're producing an inferior product. Illegal and unethical. Okay, this is pretty straightforward. You see here embezzling money, yeah, that makes sense. Engaging in sexual harassment, absolutely, that is illegal and unethical. The grayest area of ethics is this last one here, the illegal and ethical. Um, you know, prov- the top one's a really good one, and producing the lowest prices possible for underserved areas. And you may be selling that product for less than what you bought it for, which is kind of illegal in some areas because that's predatory pricing. So that one has, like I said, the biggest gray area of them all. So we got these universal ethical standards, and you see this trustworthiness, respect, responsibility. I'm not going through each one of these. I think you have a pretty good idea. Um, the one thing that I do want to mention in terms of unethical standards is in terms of trustworthiness. One thing I tell my management classes is that trust is hard to earn, it's easy to lose, and it's very difficult to gain back. And so being trustworthy is important. It's a trait that has to be um, has to be considered in terms of ethical standards. So business ethics. So in terms of business ethics, it's right or wrong in a business setting. Now, there's a little difference here. So when we talked earlier about ethics, we're talking about, what society accepts and what society expects. Here's what the business expects. And typically ethics is promoted by the leadership team. And with that, you may come across an ethical dilemma. You may find yourself where the ethics that you have conflict with the ethics of the organization. And you have some decisions to make here. Let me give you an example. At a place I worked, um, we had people that were well, let me phrase this for a second. The place I worked, we were being merged into two companies. Company A, let's say we're Company B. Company A management team took over. And so the leader, the HR person said, everyone has to prove that they can work here legally. Otherwise, fill an I-9 form. I-9 forms are documents to show that you can work here legally. And what happened to try to make this as short as possible for this video is that we had 30 people out of 300 that were illegal, and they all worked in the same part of the plant. So basically, I shut down the whole plant. And Monday came around. I needed to have a job in Atlanta by Tuesday, and we were told by our director of operations, whatever you do, do not tell your customers what happened. Do not tell them about the 30 people being illegal here. Okay. So then Tuesday comes around, the customer calls. I don't like lying to my customers. I don't like lying, period. So I told them, your job just not done. I really don't have an ETA, which I didn't. Wednesday comes around, same story. Thursday comes around, I tell them the job's not ready. So they call the sales rep. The sales rep's in Ohio, immediately flies down to Atlanta to try to salvage the account. And the reason why I'm able to tell you this next statement is because he told me. He told him that Rich was not truthful with you. Here's what happened. I still had the tread marks on my back from being thrown under the bus. And what happened is that when they called, I couldn't talk to him. I was so ashamed and embarrassed I couldn't talk to him. So I went to voicemail because I had caller ID, went to voicemail, and I emailed them back their answers. I couldn't talk to him. I was so embarrassed. And so, the dilemma came up was like, would I tell him? I was told not to tell him, but the sales rep told him I was lying to him. What do I do? At the time, my daughter was 3. My son was maybe like 6 months, had a mortgage. I needed a job, so I kept my mouth shut. And it was very hard. So, that's an example of an ethical dilemma that you may find yourself in as you're working. And sometimes you may have to take a stand and say, I'm done. I hope it doesn't come to that for you because obviously finding jobs are very difficult. But you may find yourself in that situation. So hopefully you never find yourself in an ethical dilemma at work. Okay. So in regards to ethics in the individual, these ethics, they come about between or among your schooling, your family, your friends, teams, your religion. So all these things form who you are in terms of your ethical viewpoints. Creating and maintaining an ethical organization, culture. We won't get into much of it now. All I'm going to tell you for at this point in regards to culture, and we'll tie back into ethics, is that culture is the most important part of a business. It is the heart, it's the soul of the business. And so if you have a strong culture, that's great. If you have a weak culture, a culture that says it's okay to lie, that's not really healthy. So anyway, in elements of maintaining a strong culture, ethical based actions, we are we're helping individuals who need help. We're helping individuals. We're maybe giving food, or we're giving passes to people that maybe have a sick loved one and they need help. And so I'll give you an example of that. When I was at US News, there was a person who was fighting cancer and they were struggling. They had run out of their vacation time. They basically tapped out of their insurance as well. And so an email went out to everyone at US News. If we were willing to give up a week's vacation to donate to this individual. And I can't say for all of US News because I don't know, but I know the 5 people in my office, we all donated a week to give this person. And I have a feeling that many other people did too. So that's an ethical, strong culture where you care for each other and you look out for the other in a strong fashion, in a strong moral fashion. Code of ethics. This will typically come from the leadership team, and it's basically like a constitution of how you're going to act within that organization. Implementing a code of ethics. They get executive buy-in. Of course, they're the ones going to write it. So yeah, there is going to be in that. But to follow this here, commitment to follow through. If there isn't a commitment by the leadership team, that's going to get seen by the rank and file. They're like, well, if the leadership team isn't acting ethically and they wrote this, why should we? So we need to pay attention to that. Integrate ethics into mandatory staff training. I know it's boring. I know one of the worst things is in-house training. It's gotten better. At least you can do it on a computer rather than sitting in a room and just stare at each other during the training. But it's in the more of computer modules. So ethical training is better, but it is something that we all have to do. I've had to do it in places where I've worked in printing. I've also had to do it at schools where I teach. And so that last point, enforce it. Make sure that what's being written is enforced. Okay, so that's it for ethics. And now we're going to talk about social responsibility. Now, I know that I skated through ethics really quickly, and like I said, this is a survey class. We're going to touch on a lot of topics, but not go in depth in many of them. You just saw that with the ethics. The same thing is going to happen with social responsibility too. So, in regards to social responsibility, um, you see this spectrum in front of you here. So, in regards to no contribution, that means that hey, we're not giving anything. Uh, we don't we don't believe we need to. Okay, we only do what we need to do, what's legally required. Okay, that's no contribution. Then the other one is the proactive contributions. They integrate social responsibility into their plans. They use this to recruit people to want to work for them. So let's say that they have green initiatives. They'll use a green initiative program that they have in order to recruit individuals who work for that company. So a stakeholder is someone or some entity that touches the organization. For example, if you're at a school, for example, and stakeholders of the school would be publishers of books, the people who give food to the cafeteria, the instructors, the admissions. Well, admissions part of that. Sorry, but yeah, admissions too. Include instructors, include admissions. The town which they're in. So that would be stakeholders of the school. All right. So those have that personal interest. All right. Now, in regards to responsible employees creating jobs at work, um, you know, many of us have had jobs where you felt like you weren't valued or you felt like, oh, I'm just another person there. They don't care. This idea about responsibility employees is that, yeah, you want to value them. You want to show them that they're an integral part of the organization. You can't do it without them. And if you work for that person, the first person that says, "Hey, we don't care about you," anything like that, get out. All right, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. All right. So consumerism. In regards to the social movement, you look at here the right to be safe. You go to the store, you should be safe. You should be able to read labels and know what's being on there. So the right to be informed. Excuse me. The right to choose. So in regards to, you should have choices. You should be able to say, yeah, I want this, or no, I don't want it. And then the right to be heard. If there's something that you don't like, if there's something that you feel is wrong, you should be able to talk to the store, talk to the restaurant, say, this is what I'm seeing. That's the consumerism. Okay. Now, in regards to making the world a better place, there's a Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and what that states, and this came in after Enron. Okay, this was after Enron, and what this states is that a CEO must sign off on the document to verify that all information on that document is correct to the best of his ability, that's been audited, that's looked at, and it's right so the shareholders can trust what's in it. Otherwise, they suffer legal consequences. And ever since the Sarbanes-Oxley Act has gone into play, there has not been any issues, anything like Enron. So this has been a good law that's helped the consumer. Now, in regards to social responsibility, you see the philanthropy, the marketing, and the corporate responsibility. So, a quick question for you that I want you to think about as you're listening to this is, what is social responsibility? To you, if someone came up to you in the hall or wherever you're at and they said, what's social responsibility? What would you tell them? Let me give you a definition by Jack Welch, and you can tell me if you agree with it or not. Welch said that for a company to be socially responsible, they need to win. They need to be a winning organization because only a winning organization can give back to their community, to their stakeholders. And so their first responsibility leadership team is to be a winning organization. Okay. Now, there's been other definitions too years ago about what does it mean to be socially responsible or like why are we in business? To make money. That was the definition. Why are we in business? To make money was the answer. That's changed over the last decade. Why are we in business? Yes, it's to make money, but to enhance the greater good of society. So the question becomes, what is the role of business? And, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is to preach this and preach that. That's up for you to decide. But that's a question that really needs to be answered. What is the role of business? Okay, so now we look at corporate philanthropy. I think you have a pretty idea about donations, nonprofit groups, cause-related marketing. You can see here where it's, nonprofits, and we're trying to get this money for the nonprofits. As we talked earlier in an earlier chapter, nonprofits do need to make money, but their goal is to help those that need help with what their charter is. And then you see the responsibility here. So, um, donations of time and money, they may pay their people to take time off of work to go volunteer. The school I worked at, we did that. We had a giving back day. We went to a forest, and of all things, we cut buckthorn for 4 hours. I just bent and chopped, and that's all we did for 4 hours. But we gave back. Others went to schools to read to kids. Some will paint. So there's many things that you can take a look at there in terms of responsibility. Um, Green marketing, I think you have a pretty good idea here. Promote environmentally products. You see more of that with the windmills. You're seeing that with solar energy. Now, the argument is that sometimes you may produce, it may take more fossil fuels to produce the solar panels and produce the windmills and also to install them. That'd be a valid argument. It's a valid point. But green marketing is to promote environmentally sound uh, practices and also some type of products as well. Um, we touched a little bit about this in chapter 3 when we talked about bribery. And there's some countries where bribery is actually accepted. And we frown upon it here in the U.S. So we try to avoid those individuals with that take bribes or are very corrupt. And so we need to be careful with that. And also we look at the human rights issues. Are we working with people who treat their employees fairly? Are we working with people who work in a safe environment? Okay, so that's some of the things that we take a look at. That some of the social responsibilities of companies here have to look at when they're working with organizations abroad. So we get down to our last slide and a social audit. What a social audit is basically going through a company and seeing if they're doing exactly what they say they're doing in terms of their social responsibility, and are there things that they could be doing differently. Um, this is this is a little challenging. I did one of these, a social audit, in one of my classes when I was going for an MBA, and it was an 8-week class, and we took all 8 weeks to do this. It is painstaking process because you want to make sure that what's being said and verify what's being said and true in order to being true to their word. Um, the problem here is you see the some companies will do this on their own, and the reason why they want to self-regulate, as you see here, they can get in trouble with the law if the government, if they are not doing what they're saying they're doing, if they're doing something illegally, pouring chemicals into a body of water. So they don't want to do that. There are other peoples they're going to take a look at them. You see in the slide here with unions, investors for sure are going to take a look at them. You might get some people who want to invest in an organization because of their green initiatives or because they're being socially responsible. So that's our discussion about chapter 4. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, if you have questions, please let me know. I'm here to help you, and take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next chapter. Take care. Bye-bye.